Starbucks Oleato coffee, an experience like no other. And oh boy, can you say that again? This beverage is the newest laxative in town. What an honor. Why is it causing so many people to run to the bathroom? Let's talk about it. So, fun fact about me. Once upon a time, I spent several years working in the hospital as a liver GI kidney nurse, emphasis on GI, which makes me more comfortable about talking about like bowel movements than is typically accepted in polite company. And if that's you, if you are polite company and you cannot hear about such things, this is probably one you'll want to skip. Everyone else, let's assess the history of the presenting illness, shall we? Why do Starbucks Oleato coffee drinks cause so many people to have violent diarrhea? Starbucks Oleato drinks are Starbucks blonde roast espresso or cold brew infused with Partana extra virgin olive oil. It is described by Starbucks as velvety smooth and deliciously lush. Conversely, it's described by many consumers as poop potion.
So Starbucks is selling you poop potion.
So that's glorious. There are 3 different types of Oleato drinks: a hot latte, a cold foam cold brew, and a iced shaken espresso. And before you get too excited thinking you can go out and snag yourself one of these gems, you, my friend, most likely cannot, because these are only for people living in the fanciest of cities, where people with the fanciest of taste buds reside. Currently, you can get these potions in Seattle, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, London, Milan, and Tokyo. Apparently, Starbucks will continue to introduce beverages in select locations around the world later this year, except I'm thinking that maybe that won't happen anymore after the reception in the general public eye.
Lots of people are complaining that the new olive oil drinks at Starbucks are causing them to have bathroom emergencies.
It's been a bit crappy, to say the least, but there is hope, just in case you do want a $7 poop potion that one day, my friend, they may come to your area. Remain hopeful. I, myself, have not been able to actually try this drink because me and my peasant taste buds, we live in Pennsylvania, a state that is not deemed worthy of the Oleato, and for that, I am eternally grateful. Now, your next question about all of this might be similar to mine. Why? Why did someone do this? Per a very epic and cinematic video on their YouTube channel.
As a young man, I went to Italy for the first time in my life.
Starbucks' former CEO was inspired when he traveled to Italy by families he met in Sicily who had a spoonful of olive oil in the morning as a daily supplement. Being the CEO of Starbucks, he was like, how can I use this long-standing Italian tradition to make myself some money? And he decided, well, hey, I know about coffee. Why don't we combine that with this fun tradition? And wham bam, friends, the Oleato was born. Now, do people in Italy actually put olive oil in their coffee? Not that I could find on good old Google. But if any of you are Italian, please do let me know. I know that people have long used a spoonful of olive oil as a supplement and to get the systems moving when they're a little bit slow, if you know what I mean. However, this seems to be a phenomenon that people generally keep away from their coffee time. So you have olive oil time and then you have coffee time, and the two don't necessarily mix. But when has an American CEO let what really happens in the countries that they are appropriating stop them? The answer is never. Starbucks boldly went forward, adding olive oil to coffee, saying, "It is the Italian way," and here we are. That was my Italian, in case you can't tell. The hand, somehow. I don't know. So here we are. A new wave of oiled morning beverages is upon us. And if you want to be fancy like the Italians, their marketing says you should try it too. Now, this is the part where you are going to feel old. Are you ready? Okay. I said this was the new wave of oiled morning beverages because who remembers the bulletproof coffee trend, right? Okay, bad news incoming. Are you ready? That was 10 years ago. I know, take a moment, I needed to. And when I heard about the Oleato, I immediately thought of bulletproof coffee. I'm like, oh, it reminds me of that, except this is somehow worse. And it won't shock you to know that bulletproof coffee was also not an original idea when it gained popularity in the mid 2010s. Adding fat to coffee or tea is something that has been done for many years in many different countries and cultures, with most commonly the oil being used being butter, which I appreciate as that is my favorite oil as well for cooking. Despite being raised in like the Rachel Ray generation of cooking instruction with her love for EVOO.
And then stream in your EVOO, your extra virgin olive oil.
I just like don't love olive oil. Maybe it's because I've never had like real fancy nice olive oil. Nothing against Costco olive oil, but there probably is a large bias in this video, and it lives in that I don't like olive oil. So here we are. But long before bulletproof coffee was a fad, people in Singapore added butter to their coffee for decades, and adding butter to tea has been done frequently in the Himalayas to add a bit of more oomph and like warmth to their day somehow. I don't know. Somehow it seems cozier if you add butter. I feel like they need cozy there. And honestly, there are probably a bunch more places that have done this, adding an oil to coffee for years. And if you know about that, I would love to learn from you about it in the comments. If you know a place that I didn't list, which was only 2. So there's probably a lot more. But I am willing to bet that no matter where you heard about this being done, adding oil to coffee or tea, none have been so dumb until the Oleato to add ice to this concoction. Now, I don't know why they thought that adding oil to an iced water-based beverage would infuse and mix together, but good for them and their optimism. It's like they went in, they're like, I don't care about chemistry. It doesn't apply to me. This is fine. But on the real, chemistry does apply here, and this looks really bad. It's not necessarily like the yummiest looking thing. I think we can probably all agree. And exactly how much olive oil is attempting to be infused, 1 to 3 tablespoons, depending on the drink and the size. For reference, most people recommend that like 1 tablespoon for relieving constipation of olive oil will do the trick in the research studies that I found. And that's for people who are like straight up used to consuming this on a semi-regular basis, so their body kind of is built up to it. So immediately we're going 1 to 3 tablespoons. So we are going bold with this recipe. And let us not forget, okay, the 170 to 255 milligrams of caffeine that we are adding into this mix on top of everything. More on why this adds to the chaos a little bit later. And that, my friends, is a brief history of the situation we have before ourselves. Now let's discuss the symptoms that this congealed oil spill beverage causes in the brave humans who did choose to consume it. I guess you still can consume it. They're still selling it. I mean, go forth with confidence, Starbucks. Go forth. This section will be very fast, like the speed at which consumers run to the bathroom after drinking this, because it causes a lot of diarrhea. I should say in many people, not all. Some humans have tummies of steel, but overwhelmingly, bathrooms were destroyed. But why? What actually causes this to have such an effect? As Starbucks said, this drink is an experience like no other. It is dual action. We have a bowel lubricant and an accelerator coming together for one explosive experience. First, let's look at why fat causes a laxative effect when it's consumed straight like this, in this way, which requires us to take a step back and kind of know how the GI system normally functions. So let us review. In most human systems, there is a stomach that holds the food that we just ate, and it is filled with acids and enzymes that start to break down that food. And it kind of also acts as a waiting room where food is held so that it can slowly get broken down and be released into the small intestines as food sludge, politely, in small amounts, so that the small intestine and all subsequent systems are not totally overwhelmed. The small intestine is a super long tube where most of the nutrients are absorbed from the food sludge. It's very squiggly and 22 feet long, fun fact, in most adults. So there's plenty of room for food to slowly move through and get all the goods absorbed that need to be absorbed from the foods. And when the food sludge has completed its whole journey through the small intestines, it is then deposited into the large intestine. The large intestine's main job is to dry out the leftovers that didn't get absorbed, mix that with other body waste from things like the bloodstream, and form a solid mass that can easily be expelled then from the body. The speed at which all of this whole process takes place, it depends on your gut's motility. Gut motility is determined by tiny contractions like all along the GI system that squeeze things right along to the exit. For most people in a healthy system, it takes like 3 to 4 days for the whole process to occur from by the time you eat it to when you get rid of it. So it's little gentle squeezes that this gut motility is that ensure that your food will spend enough time at each station in the system so it can do its job along the way. And nobody's like stressed, nobody's rushed, your belly's having a good time. But sometimes good times are not had. Sometimes things disrupt the system. Like when your human drinks a bunch of straight up olive oil. Of the main food types, carbs, proteins, and fats are harder for our GI system to absorb and break down, and consuming too much straight up fat can overwhelm the system, causing it to perform an emergency evacuation. Normally, when you consume fat, digestive enzymes in the stomach combined with bile when it gets to the small intestines and the enzymes from there, they will break down the fat. And when there is fat in your foods, your body has a lot of time to kind of take a look at that fat, absorb it, because the stomach is the waiting room, remember? And it's full and things can slowly start to digest there. Everyone's like in a waiting, holding pattern, trying to get through to the small intestines because, it's packed in there. There's a lot going on. However, when you consume just straight up fat like olive oil, particularly on an emptier stomach, the waiting room of the stomach, it's totally empty. So you don't have to wait to pass go. The fat passes just like straight to the small intestine, which doesn't have enough enzyme or bile to deal with that influx of oil. And the system gets very easily overwhelmed, meaning straight up oil ends in the large intestine, sliding right through all of the previous digestive zones without pausing, to get absorbed or anything. And when the oil hits the large intestines, the oil coats things kind of like a slip and slide. It both makes things easier to slip right out and helps things slide because it coats the goods that are already in the chamber, keeping their moisture from getting absorbed. And moisture as byproduct is much easier and much more willing to move right on out than a dehydrated product. And as if this slip and slide was not already fun enough, we accelerate the whole process by adding caffeine. Because why not? It stimulates the bowels and they get right on moving at an even quicker pace than they already were. So we have, as you can tell at this point, quite the situation. Does this combination make everyone have gastric distress? No. Everyone has a very different tolerance of how much straight up oil that they can consume without any negative side effects. But for many people, this combination has had an impressive laxative effect. And olive oil isn't the only oil that has this effect on your GI systems, but interestingly, different oils have this effect due to different reasons. Also, as I say that sentence, if I could tell my younger self that one day she would be interested in why certain oils make you poo versus other ones, well, wow. Life is just weird, isn't it? But I am genuinely interested, so let's keep talking. Here's a basic list of how other oils interact with your bowels in case you were thinking of going and making experimental oil coffee with other things. Let this dissuade you. First up, we have castor oil. You've probably heard of this as the oil people drink to put them into labor. And well, yes, it can do that, but it also usually gives you violent bowel movements, which tells you everything, honestly, that you need to know about the end of pregnancy, that people are so desperate to get the human out that they will consume something that both puts them into one of the most painful physiologic processes they will ever endure, and they will do it knowing that they will also simultaneously have diarrhea. Now, having been 41 weeks pregnant in a heat wave in September, I get it. I really get it, but still, I don't recommend that method of baby evacuation. But nevertheless, here's how it works, just in case you're curious for science. Castor oil contains something called ricinoleic acid, which when you consume castor oil, again, the system for digesting oil is overwhelmed by so much of it. So a bunch of it slips through to the intestines unabsorbed. And when the ricinoleic acid comes in contact with the walls of the intestines, it binds to receptors that are on the smooth muscle cells of the intestinal walls. Do you remember that motility we were talking about? Well, this kind of takes the motility and it's like, let's go. And it causes an emergency evacuation of the entire system. Your uterus is the neighbor of the intestines and also gets stimulated by this, which can cause contractions. But again, accompanied by the runs, which leads to dehydration and can cause stronger and faster contractions than you would normally have in early labor, which can distress your body and baby. And overall, it's just not the ideal baby bringing forth condition. So avoid that method. Next up in our examination, we have mineral oil, which is a fairly common laxative. When consumed, it acts a lot like olive oil, mostly doing the slip and slide effect. So very similar. Maybe we will see mineral oil coffee next. I used mineral oil to seal butcher block countertops in my old house, and it's very popular amongst that sphere. So maybe we'll see house reno DIY circles type of like mineral oil coffee. Could be fun, very on brand. And then we have MCT oil, a fan favorite in a lot of like supplement type circles. This one is not for the faint of heart though. MCT oil, or medium chain triglyceride, contains something called glycerol, which is a component of glycerin suppositories, which are given to people who are struggling to have movements. It pulls water into the large intestine, which then causes things to be like flushed right on out. It's called a hyperosmotic laxative, which sounds very hardcore, and things will certainly get hyper all right. So those are some weird facts about your GI absorption that you all know now. Yay. Go us. Go forth and thrill your friends and family with your newfound knowledge, preferably while you are all eating like a nice, fun, large meal together. They will absolutely love it. But the moral of the story is you can only absorb so much fat at a time. And when your body gets too much, it activates the emergency evacuation door. And if you are so bold as to mix that with caffeine, you too, my friend, could be in for an experience like no other. So what can you do to treat this situation? As a primary care NP, I can give my favorite line: best cure is prevention, which is also your reminder to go make an appointment with your PCP today, or go get a PCP if you don't have one. Everyone needs a primary care provider. Find one you like. We're thebomb.com. All right. PSA over. But really, this is the best way to avoid this whole entire effect, is just not to straight up drink oil mixed with caffeine. But if you want to be so bold and try it, work up to it, my friends. Maybe like share with a friend that you hate so you have less going on into your system. Work your way up to like a full drink. There's definitely a tolerance effect here. If you always have 1 tablespoon of olive oil in the morning, your body is already used to that, and you can probably have this drink with no issue. So just go low and slow, friends, and maybe also drink it when you're going to be in the proximity of one of your favorite bathrooms, just in case things get a little bit wild. And if you're someone who struggles with like gallbladder issues, or gallbladder, they just ripped it right on out, or pancreas or liver issues, you likely already struggle with fat absorption, because those are the organs that give you the bile and the enzymes to break it down. So this is probably just a drink you're going to want to skip entirely. Other things you can do to minimize symptoms would be consuming this drink with food, but you would obviously want that to be like not greasy food to add to everything. Again, unless you just want to live life very dangerously. And if the bathroom gods were not in your favor and you do get the runs from this or something like this, there's really not much you can do to stop it. Not much you really want to do to stop it, to be honest. You have to let your body like have its evacuation go and like equilibrate, figure itself out. But you can feed it foods that are going to not make it worse, right? So things like the brat diet, like bananas, rice, applesauce, toast, other things, saltines, oatmeal, boring things that just don't have like a lot of fat. Basically anything to kind of slow down, be the brakes on the GI system at this point. Opposite of our previous action where we put the caffeine on and slammed on the gas pedal. We're gonna avoid that for right now. I hope you have enjoyed learning about this drink and its many interesting effects. And if you have tried it, please do let us know how you liked it. If you've experimented at home with olive oil in your coffee, let me know. The warm version seems to make more sense to me than the cold. None sound great, but that one, if anything, sounds like it would like make me not spit it right out. But who knows? It might be delicious, and I just don't have the taste buds that are sophisticated enough or the GI system to handle such things. So do let me know how this experience was for you down in the comments. And always remember, my friends, whether you enjoy oil in your coffee or not, know that you are not alone in this world. You are enough with whatever fancy or not so fancy taste buds you have. And you, my friends, can do hard things like survive a whole video about poop potions. See you next time. Bye.